Hey, what's up everybody? In this video, we're going to cover real quick and brief the steps that you need to take in order to start a business. So I'll do some other videos where we go into each step in a little bit more depth, but in this video, we'll just walk through what the steps are and a general order for, what order to do those steps in. Now, there's some other steps that we aren't going to talk about. We're going to talk about more about the actual official steps to create a business. But of course, you need to come up with a business name, a marketing strategy. How are you going to get the word out? Maybe a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Maybe ask around, see if there's a market for your business. So all those things are really important that you need to do. But this is going to cover the steps to actually creating that business. So step one is you need to figure out what entity, what structure of business you're going to operate under. So the options there are a sole proprietor or self-employed or independent contractor, okay? So those kind of are used interchangeably, but you're basically a sole proprietor. You're operating the business under your own name, Schedule C on your personal tax return as a self-employed person running their own business. Now you can do a DBA, a doing business as, under that, where you come up with a name like John's Cookie Shop and you file the DBA, but you're still a sole proprietor using another name. You can also still get an EIN, an employer identification number from the IRS, where you don't have to use your social, but you're using the EIN for the business and you're still a sole proprietor. Now, your next option is to create some sort of actual legal entity. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice, but there are legal entities that you can use to create your business as well. You can incorporate by filing articles of incorporation with your Secretary of State or Department of State. You can be a corporation, which by default for tax purposes, you're a C Corp, C Corporation. You can file articles of organization, in which case you file those to become an LLC or a limited liability company with your state. You can set up a partnership if you have another business owner. Now, you can be a C corporation, you can incorporate or do an LLC as an individual. In order to create a partnership, you have to have another business owner to be in partnership with you. And you don't actually file anything for the partnership, but you just create a partnership agreement with the other individual using an attorney generally, and you can form a partnership. So C corporation, LLC, partnership, sole proprietor. Those are your four main structures. Now, for tax purposes, you can also be an S corporation. An S corporation is not a legal entity. It only exists for tax purposes. And if you incorporate as a corporation or you file the articles to be an LLC, either of those business entities can elect to be an S corporation. All right, so those are kind of your entity structure. Again, I'll do another video where we dive into those in more depth. But that's your first step. What type of structure am I going to have for this business? All right. The second step is to actually file the articles. If you choose a corporation or an LLC, then you're going to actually file the articles of incorporation or articles of organization with your state department. Sometimes it's called Secretary of State, depending on what state you're in, or Department of State, depending on what state you're in. But you file those articles. You may want to go through an attorney or a service to do that, or you can do it yourself to create those entities. If you're going to be a sole proprietor, you don't really have to create that entity. And again, if you're going to be a partnership, you can write up a partnership agreement yourself or just have a verbal agreement to be in partnership with someone. But I would highly recommend getting an attorney and a written operating agreement for that partnership. So now you know what type of structure you want to be. You've formed that structure. And if you're a sole proprietor, you want to use a DBA, then you have to, jump through a couple of hoops to register the DBA, advertise it publicly, and then you have the DBA. So you've done those two steps. The next step is to get an EIN, an employment identification number. Now, as a sole proprietor, self-employed individual, you don't have to do this, but I definitely recommend still doing it so that you don't have to use your social security number, but you can use the EIN number. If you have to fill out a W-9 for a vendor and provide the business information to them, you can use an EIN instead of your social. You can open up a business checking account under the EIN instead of your social. So you go to the IRS website, you get the EIN. Now, I wait, if you're going to be an LLC or a corporation or something, I wait to do this step until after those articles are approved by your state. just in case you didn't really search ahead of time and someone else already had the business name you wanted, or there were some issues with the business name and it had to be changed a little bit, you want to wait to get the EIN until after you know the business name is approved so that you don't have to go and change that again with the IRS after you've already got the EIN. Next step is once you have the articles, if you're incorporating or being an LLC, and once you have the EIN, now you can go to your bank and you can open up a business checking account. Now, I always tell people you have to have a separate business checking account. Even if you don't do the EIN or the articles of incorporation and you're just a sole proprietor, you still want a separate account where all business income and expenses run through that. You don't want to be mingling that in with your personal expenses because it just makes that much harder to go back and get the records at tax time. It's also not as clean. It's just better to operate it as its own separate entity, especially if it is one. So you want to get a business checking account to run everything for the business in and out of. So once you have like I said, you have the articles and you have the EIN, you take those two things to the bank and they'll open up a business checking account for you. The next thing you want to do is you want to fund the account, right? So you got to put in capital to start the business. So, maybe you've already done some of this because you were operating as a self-employed person, sole proprietor, kind of testing the waters, and now you're doing these steps. But if you're doing them from the beginning, okay, you've got the checking account, you're going to fund the business with the startup capital. Maybe you need a lot, maybe you don't need much, depending on your business, but you're going to open up that checking account and fund your business with your startup capital. The last thing that you need to do in this particular step of just kind of officially starting a business is you might need licenses for your business. So you'll definitely need some business licenses, most likely based on the fact that you're starting a business. So a lot of times the state might issue a business license, the county might issue a business license, and the city might issue a business license. So here in Orlando, you have to have a tax receipt, which is the same thing. It was called a business license in North Carolina. But you have to have a tax receipt in the city of Orlando and in Orange County. Now, if you're not in the city proper and you're just kind of outside the city limits, you need the Orange County tax receipt. So that Orange County tax receipt, I think it's $60 a year. So these aren't super expensive, but you have to have that business license because you're operating a business. So you need to research that, find out what it is in your area. The other license that you might need might be a professional license. So some industries are regulated by a professional licensing body. So like here in Florida, I have my CPA license, which is regulated by the CPA Board of Examiners. But Florida, I also have to get a license not only for my individual self as a CPA, but for my firm as a CPA firm. So that's two licenses through the DBPR, the Department of Business and Professional Regulations is what I think that stands for. But I have to have those licenses professionally to operate as a CPA and a CPA firm in Florida. So you want to look at licensing. There's plenty of other industries that are licensed by the state as well. So again, that's kind of the high level. Here's the steps you need to take in order to create a business. There's definitely more steps you need to do in order to start a business, but those are the official steps to create a business entity. My name is Brad. I'm with Wooten CPA. My goal is to bring peace to your finance and tax responsibilities. One of the ways I do that is through these videos on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you're notified when new videos come out. Thank you for watching.